Just to let you know what's happening what's going on at this summit right now. In about a couple of minutes, we're going to have a signing ceremony between Djibouti and financial lenders. So if you're interested in that, that's about half an hour in length. That's going to be happening in Hall B. In Hall A, we're going to be jumping into our first panel discussion. We're going to be talking about energy, more specifically, hydrocarbons. So to deliver this session's keynote address via video, I'd like to introduce to you Abdullah bin Hamad Al Attiyah, the former energy minister of Qatar.
Good morning, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to congratulate Mr. Jenkins and ICP for hosting this summit in these difficult times. I wish I could be with you in Turkey for this summit, but because of COVID-19, I'm unable to do so. I know that 2020 was a very difficult year for the energy industry, but I have seen it recover from bigger challenges in the past. And I believe the energy industry will always recover. It can be sick, but they never die. 2020 showed us the need of global cooperation, highlighting the importance of the ICP summit. I'm sure you have enjoyed the discussion so far, and I have no doubt that you are all enjoying Turkey and ICP's excellent hospitality. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you to my good friend, Mr. Jenkins, as we look forward to exciting 2021. I wish you a very good discussions, and I hope to see you soon.
Sayın Bakanım, Sayın Büyükelçim, değerli katılımcılar.
Well, distinguished minister, distinguished participants, I would like to salute you all with deepest respect. And I will be the moderator of this session, and I am honored to be the moderator of this session. And I would like to thank Cengiz Özgencil for this invitation, and I wish and hope that this conference will be proven to be beneficial and successful.
And pleasure for me to be moderating this very important energy panel. I have very distinguished speakers that I would like to invite to the floor. First, we should start with Madame Ebru Dildar Edin. Please, Madame. And Mr. Murat Lecomte, is he around? Murat Bey? He might participate maybe at a later stage. Buyurun efendim. And Volkan Kara Bey. Buyurun, hoş geldiniz. Bey'in şirketinden. Daha yaklaştıralım, peki. Alessandro, hoş geldiniz. Alessandro Cadell will participate. Volkan Bey, is he going to participate also in the discussion? Alexander Cadell. He's online, very good. And Mr. Howard Bevan from Qatar, a good friend, who will also be participating in the discussion. Şimdi izninizle.
With your permission, first, let's start with Mr. Volkan Kara. he have 10 minutes. I believe the connections are set already. All right. All right. I mean, as we are, I mean, wearing the masks and the eyeglasses at the same time, you know the impact. So I would like to apologize. I don't see you because if I wear the masks and the eyeglasses at the same time, it is so challenging. But hopefully we will manage this session. Thank you so much, distinguished minister, for this nice speech as a keynote speech. Since we have a limited time, by the way, I'd like to start with Mr. Volkan Kara. He will have 10 minutes to address the audience. It is a very important topic, as you can imagine. If you like, by the way, you can actually come to the stage. No, I will be doing my presentation as I sit here. I would like to ask from the technicians to reflect my presentation. Well, I will make a small introduction. This is really important. The sustainability and the hydrocarbon issue. First of all, I will be speaking what is going on in the world, in the global sense. Of course, net zero decarbonization issue is really important, and it is actually at the core of all climate change agreements which are being signed. This is why it is really important. Both the European Union and Biden, the newly elected president, actually commits that their countries will become carbon zero by 2050. So these two important economic blocs, the European Union and the United States of America, are going for a carbon zero economy. And as you know, the European Union first is trying to reduce the carbon emission by half, and by 2050, the European Union committed a very important title because it will have a huge impact on the countries which are, making trade with the European Union.
Şimdi ben bir takım rakamlar paylaşmak istiyorum aslında konunun büyüklüğünü ve hassasiyetini anlatmak için.
Well, let me share a couple of figures in my presentation.
Karbon salınımı mevcut haliyle
Right now, the carbon emissions, I mean, if they continue like this, by 2050, it will reach to 47 to 50 million billion gigaton. This is what is expected. So in order for us to be carbon neutral, we are in need of a huge transformation. And the figures that we are trying to reach by 2050 is from 47 gigatons to 10 gigatons. So this reduction is a huge and very ambitious target. That's why while those economic powers are, giving those promises, we should be aware of the fact that it requires huge transformative changes. So up until now, we are trying to make use of the renewable energy resources, and we are trying to boost the electrification so that by enabling energy efficiency, we can actually reduce the carbon emissions. That is the tactic right now. But I mean, if the energy efficiency studies are going like this, we can only accomplish not 10 gigatons, but 37 gigatons. So it will mean 10 gigatons of actually an improvement by 2050. But what we should really accomplish is to reduce those emissions from 47 to 10 gigatons. I mean, if we actually make use of synthetic fuels, biomass, and hydrogen, then maybe we can accomplish those targets, because those topics are critical. So this figure, 47 gigatons, 15 gigatons of this actually comes from the heavy industries. What are those heavy industries? Cement, electric generation, steel, glass productions, ceramic production. Well, those industries are really hard to be decarbonized. Thank you so much for showing my presentation, by the way. Well, the decarbonization of those industries are really hard because carbon should be used as a raw material in those industries. That's why we are in need of huge innovations in those industries, and we have to change the production technologies in those sectors. Transportation, as you know, is a very important carbon-consuming sector. And with the electrification in the transportation system, maybe we will be starting to use and consume more hydrogen, because it will not be possible for us to make plane fly with electrification. Turkey is doing more than 500 million tons of carbon emissions. Since Turkish economy is very vivid and a developing economy, unfortunately, this rate is increasing by 3 or 4% on an annual basis. So by 2050, we might be increasing this level to 600 millions if we don't change anything. Could you please change my presentation, by the way? Well, first of all, let me briefly speak about the supply and demand. Well, we can produce our primary energy, 20% of it, by the renewable energy resources. And we have to increase this figure to 65%. So right now, the installed capacity is below 2 terawatts, and we have to increase this time 8 times, and we have to reach to 15 terawatts. And this actually means an additional $10 trillion of investments. Well, it will bring along a huge dynamism to the global economy, but at the same time, it requires huge amount of resources to be realized. What about the demand side? Of course, we have to do a couple of things on the consumer side. Well, it is really important to reduce the energy intensity on the demand side. Right now, we could accomplish like 1% of a reduction in the energy intensity, but we have to increase that to 3% or 4%. First, we have to make the supply side renewable, and on the demand side, we have to make additional savings. At least we have to find the technologies which will enable us to save more. Synthetic fuels will be very important, like hydrogen. I mean, we are not using them. By 2050, hopefully, their share in the total energy consumption will be increasing to 10 or 15%. And the electrolysis investments should be made. In order to generate the hydrogen, we have to, generate the green hydrogen, but as we call it, which requires an additional $3 trillion of investments. Of course, those figures, those monies are big monies. I mean, if you think about the GDP of Turkey, it is at the level of 700 and 800, billion dollars. You can easily understand how big the amount is. When we exclude the household consumptions from our calculations, 85% of the carbon emissions are coming from 4 industries. 1/3 of it is coming from the electric generation, transportation, agriculture, and cement sectors are following I mean, the first sector. Cement is really important for us. Transportation is indispensable. I mean, for the agriculture, we also consume fuel. So as a result, the energy intensity is very high in Turkey. So there is this circular economy. Could you please go back to the previous slide? Rather than throwing the products that we use, it is really important to produce energy from the wastes. And it is highly critical to recycle the products that we are using. And especially the lands which are used for mining and industry should be reclaimed. Well, I mean, if we can accomplish all those, it will bring along huge economic savings. So in a global scale, it will mean that we will be saving like 2 trillion euros. So lots of companies should be stepping up and make investment in those fields. In our letter of will in the Paris Agreement, we have committed to reduce our emissions by 20%, I mean carbon dioxide emissions by 20%. And in order to realize that, of course, we have to increase our share in renewable energy resources. As we speak about such high figures in terms of the investment, we also have to understand what kind of repercussions it will have on the financial side. I mean, the financial bodies should invest in those sustainable economies and energy resources. Well, the financial investors actually have 100 trillion dollars of assets under management. And as a result, right now, the 84% of the whole financial investors are willing to invest in the field of sustainability and the companies who are trying to accomplish the sustainability. This very fact is really critical as we are aiming to attract foreign direct investments. So we have to invest in those green fields by creating an economic investment. I mean, it will be quite critical to attract foreign direct investments, as I told, and it will be highly important for Turkey to find additional loans from the international finance institutions. On the right-hand side, you see the energy and utility fields, and you can easily see how green bonds are increasing, and we are expecting that figure to go beyond $300 billion. So the bonds, the green bonds, which are being created by the renewable energy companies, are expected to go beyond $300 billion. So, how can we accomplish all those? The current industrial players and current energy sector players should go through an ambitious transformation if we want to achieve 2050 targets. And transformation cannot take place only if we invest in new energy resources, but we have to change our way of doing business. There are certain ways of doing business that we are accustomed to, but we have to make innovations in those fields. Thank you.
And welcome back. Thank you very much indeed for this very informative keynote introductory remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, the decarbonization of the global economy has gained momentum recently. And in fact, energy transition is the order of the day. The energy sector was hard hit by the pandemic, following the stagnation, and then with the pandemic, it was really hard hit, especially coal and oil. Major polluters, the major polluters are on the decline. We should expect maybe oil demand, global oil demand to peak earlier than expected, according to the International Energy Agency. In fact, many countries and companies decided to shift into renewables, wind and solar in particular. So, as I said, oil demand should peak earlier, but natural gas is likely to remain with us for many years to come. In fact, natural gas demand will be around 50% between now and 2050, while the general energy demand will remain at around 24%. So global gas demand is going to rise dramatically as an intermediate energy resource. Climate change, dear participants, is one of the major and has been declared as one of the major challenges, global challenges, and it has to be dealt with globally through cooperation at the global level. And at this point, maybe we should recall, as Volkan Bey has also alluded to, we should recall also the return of the United States to the 2015 Paris Agreement on climate change, because Paris Agreement was a real breakthrough in the field of climate change, as all countries and signatories decided to commit, to make commitments, but these commitments are not enough, so we should expect more ambitious commitments to be agreed this year in Glasgow during the conference of the parties. So now coming back to our subject, as I mentioned, the issue of renewables, and the renewables are on the rise with this decarbonization process. Maybe at this point, I should give the floor to one of my friends, a prominent banker who dealt with renewable energy projects financing. So I would be obliged, I would be very pleased if you could, Madame Edin, if you could maybe offer us your appraisal of the situation in Turkey and what sort of questions and problems we have faced in financing major renewable energy projects, and what do you expect, what sort of developments do you expect during the year 2021? Şimdi değerli
Now, distinguished participants, I would like to give the floor to the Deputy General Director of Guarantee Bank, distinguished expert and banking specialist, Edin. Thank you very much, Mithat. First of all, I'd like to recall about the past 2 decades in Turkey. In 2000, the installed power of Turkey was 32,000 megawatts. At the moment, we have tripled the figure. And the share of the renewables in this huge installed power is around 12,000 megawatts 20 years ago, but at the moment it has been 49,000 megawatts for renewables. And actually, it has been a great prediction for Turkey. Actually, we succeeded in increasing the share of renewables and maintenance power to a great extent. And actually, in the total generation, the share of the renewables has increased to 40%. And the total investment for this was around $100 billion just for the energy generation project. And $65 billion was provided funded by the bank, and $55 billion was provided by the local banks. And both the Turkish investors, government, and the bank are all aware of the developments and the trend towards renewable. And it has been a quick adaptation. And the YEKTEM model in Turkey, without YEKTEM, the projects couldn't be realized. About YEKTEM, now there are new regulations. What was the YEKTEM project? For 10 years, as the banks, we are providing the loans for 10 years, and throughout these 10 years, actually, the price of the energy is determined in dollar currency, and actually, the machines and equipment were imported, therefore, the currency was dollar, and there was a predictable cash flow. And with 20 or 25% capital, we provided finance for these projects, for the renewable energy generation projects. And actually, there are many news in the newsletters about the YEKDAM project, and we need to think about it. Without the ECTEM, every year we would be importing $3 billion of extra natural gas. And thanks to ECTEM, the share of the renewables increased. And actually, thanks to ECTEM projects, the price of electricity is also decreasing, because if the electricity was generated on the base of carbon, the prices would be 1 cent higher, and there is a saving of 50 or 60 million dollars. Actually, the cost belongs to the imported machines. Okay, there is a 50 or 20 billion dollars of equipment cost, but there is a great savings of Turkey thanks to these YEKDAM projects, renewables. And in the new era, now we are continuing with a new model. 52% is in Turkish lira and 48% is in foreign exchange. This is a new payment model for the loans. And as the banks, actually, this is quite challenging for the banks, because the new cash flow is not that predictable now. And in the past, actually, the 75% of the investment cost of the project was funded by the banks, but at the moment the model changed, and unfortunately for renewables, I don't think that the same speeds will be called. But our total consumption has not increased since 2017. Actually, previously, our modeling was based on the fact that actually it's also associated with the GDP. Unfortunately, that uh, relation has broken, and we are talking about energy efficiency, and therefore, I do not foresee a great increase in energy consumption from now on. And there is an excess of capacity in electricity, and therefore it's a burden on the market. And it will be a stable a movement in the market. And now there is a new terminology called consensus. Actually, there are new projects we are hearing all over the world. The banks say that the coal projects are committed to be quitted by the banks, and these are strong commitments actually. We need to be adapted as the whole country. We need to quit the coal-based projects. And actually, we also talked about the green agreements. And in this atmosphere, actually, if the electricity source is questionable for the products that we import, then our focus must be changed. And from now on, we the investors who create and the banks who create coal based projects will be focusing more on the renewable sources. Thank you very much, Ebru, for your contributions. In Turkey, in energy, we have taken a huge step, especially in the evaluation of the renewable energy resources. The banks are supportive with the in terms of financing, and our companies has undersigned really important successes. Distinguished participants, actually, the future of Turkey is undoubtedly based on a robust energy market. And 15 years ago, we were talking about the safe supply and demand, and now we're talking about renewable energy. So, as robust energy basket is required for Turkey, including the nuclear energy, renewable resources, hydropower, solar power, wind power, and Turkey has a great potential for this. And we're still evaluating this. Actually, financing is of this is a problem, as Ebru also mentioned. And if you are seeking for foreign finance, then we need to focus on this decarbonization process. For example, one of the most important issues here is that we have a great potential of source, but today the subversion of coal is no longer possible, and gradually the world is going away from coal and petroleum because um, or else there are 136 countries who have identified their target of being carbon free, and actually by 2050 most of these countries will be carbon free, and especially on in April there will be a climate summit in the US, and if we are to attend that summit, we need to be well prepared about the renewables and our targets and goals about renewables. We need a roadmap for this, and if we have the time and opportunity, we will also discuss this as well. And I would like to give the floor again to Volkan to talk about the green agreement of the European Union and its possible effects on Turkey. Now, I would like to give the floor to Murat Leconte as well, our distinguished friend. Is he online? Murat, is he online? Unfortunately, he cannot attend now.
Howard?
Hello?
Hello, yes. Great to hear
Oh,
you.
well.
Yes. Yes, please, you have the floor. Good.
Thank you. It's good to be on Zoom with all my friends from Turkey, from Istanbul. It's not the same, I have to say, it's not the same as being there. However, just a few general comments. My colleague who talked about banking, banking is the key to everything. Finance is the key to everything. But I have been looking at Turkey's performance in the world of renewables and emissions. and I have got just a few things to say about this. Overall, if one looks against other major economies and other industrialized nations, actually Turkey's performance on electricity generation by renewables is actually very respectable. It's I have some here, between 14 and 50% of electricity is generated by renewables, and that puts Turkey in very respectable company. USA is only 11%. Italy a bit above. Turkey is about the same as the Netherlands, Poland, Spain. The performance is in fact very good, and it is due to this whole plethora of projects, solar, wind, little bit of geothermal, that progress is being made. But the overall figures show that emissions are high on a per head basis, and it disguises, the overall figures disguise two separate attributes to Turkey's performance. The first is that, of course, hydro is an immense, and some people count it in as green, somewhat not, but anyway, it's non-emitting. And the hydro, of course, is, sorry, I'm just looking for my figures, hydro at about 15% of electricity generation is very respectable. In fact, it's high, perhaps, per head of population, only Brazil comes better. So that is very high, and that's great. But there is a different side, and that is, of course, coal generation, electricity generation by coal, which is also very high. High, subsidized, I know you got locked in, and worst of all, of course, it's lignite. Now, many other countries have struggled with lignite as well. Germany has their struggles in the EU and are struggling to deal with it, in fact. Poland, I believe, is not struggling. It's just saying, not for quite some time. So lignite is a major problem for emissions within Turkey. And looking at your coal reserves, which are essentially all lignite, there is at the current production rates, probably well over 100 years worth of reserves. So it's a major economic problem for Turkey. Just as stranded assets of other coal, even other sources of energy, stranded assets is a major problem. So that's something which I would highlight. But I would throw in my experience from the UK, where I was involved in a mining area with also lots of coal-fired power stations. And we were looking to put in gas. The best, and this is like an aside, and I think it probably applies to Turkey, that because the coal-fired power stations have got all their grid connections and their transformers, which are all very, very expensive, the best place to put gas-fired power stations to help in the transition towards 2050 is in fact on the coal-fired electricity generation plant sites. So this is something I would look at very carefully, as I did in the UK. And as I wandered around the UK looking for sites, I was also looking for where gas pipelines were, because of course you've got ample pipelines going through Turkey. So this is a situation which I see a way ahead for Turkey to reduce emissions, but it won't be easy. I will go back to the UK and the coal miners' strikes of 3 decades ago, and I would say that the problems are not really solved. In terms of mining, unemployment, areas where employment is affected. It hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy for the UK, and I don't think it will be easy for Turkey either, in exactly the same way. So I see positives and negatives about Turkey's response, and lots of difficult things to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you for your very stimulating contribution to the panel, and I hope that we can leave this pandemic behind us and see each other either in Doha or in Istanbul.
Both, please, both. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I would just say as well that His Excellency Alatia always sends his regards and always reminds us of his visits to Turkey.
Yes, please convey my warm regards to Minister Alatia. I had the pleasure of getting together with him when he was active minister in Doha.
Of course, yes.
He made such significant contributions to the energy sector of Qatar. I'm sure the Qataris are grateful to him for his major contributions.
Indeed, they are.
Thank you. So now I have Mr. Alessandro Cadell. Is he with us?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Alessandro Bey, you have the floor. Please, if you could kindly, I was advised to wind up the session in half an hour, if possible, the latest. And so you have the floor, sir. Alessandro.
Thank you very much. And it's a great pleasure to be here. And I think that I'll try to go back to a couple of points Volkan raised, and I comply with the deadline promised. I think that the net zero 2050 target Europe and EMEA, generally speaking, has set for themselves is a very ambitious target. There are a couple of elements that we need to really look at carefully. The first one is the technology. The reality of fact is that if you look at the current technologies, renewable, electric mobility, hydrogen, the gap that this technology will be able to cover won't allow Europe at large to go to the net zero target. So we do expect, or we do oversee the potential or the need to further innovate and evolve the technology. There are technologies, especially in the circular economy environment, pyrolysis, gasification, which could be a good piece of the equation as we evolve into this net zero context. The second point that is worth highlighting is that today we've been discussing about a future back angle. So basically, it's a scenario exercise that set us ambitious target for 2050. What we're also struggling with is the gap between the scenario that we are building and the reality of fact. This gap needs to be closed, need to be bridged. And by bridge, I mean that if we then look at either the market design or at the, let's say, context factor that we live in, the authorization process, the NIMBY effect, all these elements are or could prevent this process to be fully deployed. So we need to be cautious about the ambition, but on the other side, we also need to be cautious and have the government and the institution working in a consistent way to lay out the perfect path toward those ambitions. And some of the example, and let me just recall one, the authorization process is currently something that risks to prevent the target, not just in 2050, but also in 2030. There is another element that was discussed today, which is the more or the wider sustainability angle. I think that most of the players have done a great job in reassessing and reshaping their position vis-a-vis the global ESG ranking. There are several of them, all trustworthy. But I think that this way of looking at sustainability through the rating improvement is just a piece of the equation. As the more player will evolve along that axis, the more we will also have to face what is beyond the rating mechanism. And I think that on this angle, let me put this way, the importance or the role of a player in evolving and taking on a more circular economy or circular approach within their operating model is something that will come forward strong and fast. And I'm referring to concepts such as waste to energy, but also waste to material. So material to material, all the recycling we use, push that we can build around and to achieve a more sustainable operating model. The last element that was touched upon during this very interesting panel was around the financial actors, the financial player. I think that the first step, and there are a couple of great examples of ESG-linked bond that were issued in the market in the last 12 to 18 months, have proven how the financial community is willing to put money behind innovative and sustainable initiatives. Volkan presented the data regarding the green bond, which is another very interesting and appealing product. But I think that this segmentation of the end market from the financial standpoint will keep on pushing toward putting in a word on players that let's say, build their operating model, their ambition and their vision around a more sustainable, more sustainable goal. I'm not going to go into the other pieces of the ESG, so social and government, which are at the same level important as the environmental one. But I think that this is a trend that can only accelerate looking forward. So when we discuss with our clients and we interact with the major companies and institutions, I think that most of them look at the world from a future forward type of angle. So taking today's situation and stretching that into the future, I think that the exercise that the economy, the system, the government, and the citizenship has asked us to do will be much more future-backed. So reimagining how the world will be in 2030 and 2050, and backward designing what needs to be done to achieve a more sustainable, more fair, and more equal growth throughout all these dimensions. I kept my time and I give back the word to you, thanking for the opportunity to share my view.
I thank Alexander Cadell for his contribution to this panel. Thank you so much. Dear participants, Excellencies, if you have a look at our program, the title was Turkey's Hydrocarbon Rights, Cooperation Opportunities in the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. So here, let me just say a few words about the situation. First of all, let me start with the Black Sea. In the Black Sea, Turkey managed to discover some rich gas resources during the year 2020. It was a major discovery. Everybody was pleased. Now they are drilling appraisal wells. And it is less complicated than the Eastern Mediterranean because it is in the Turkish exclusive economic zone, the area. And of course, the Turkish leadership and the Ministry of Energy expressed their desire and readiness to engage in cooperation with major technology companies and energy companies with a view to be able to monetize this rich gas resources. It will take some time, but I can see that the Ministry of Energy is behind this project. In fact, we managed to establish a good capacity in the field of deep sea drilling. Turkey has 3 deep sea drilling vessels and 3 major also research vessels. And the aim is to tap the resources in the Eastern Mediterranean. Of course, in Mediterranean, as we talk about Turkey's hydrocarbon rights, the issue is a bit more complicated. It's complex. It has its legal lag. It's the legal and political, also the energy resources, how to share the energy resources. And also the interest of major energy companies is there because of the discoveries of Egypt and the major discoveries of Israel. But here we have a major problem. The problem is, first of all, is the Cyprus issue. In Cyprus, we have 2 sovereign entities. And the Greek Cypriots unilaterally concluded certain agreements, delineation agreements, without consulting or seeking the consent of the Turkish Cypriots. Here, let's keep in mind that in the case of Cyprus, we have two communities, the Turkish Cypriots and the Greek Cypriots, and they have equal political status. They have 2 sovereign states at this point in time, although the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus is recognized only by Turkey. It's a fact of life. And that the Greek Cypriots do not control the island as a whole. They have no rights to do so. The Turkish Cypriots are the co-founders. So then those agreements that are concluded with Egypt, Israel, and Lebanon, without the consent of the Turkish Cypriots, Turkey and the Turkish Cypriots do not regard them as valid international agreements. So what we did, Turkey and the Turkish Cypriots, they declared unilaterally their own maritime jurisdiction area. So what we have now is that overlapping maritime jurisdiction areas in the Eastern Mediterranean and conflicting arguments. So according to international law, the fundamental principle of international law governing such maritime jurisdiction delineation matters is the principle of equity. So Turkey's basic argument, main argument, is that it has to be the delineation of maritime jurisdiction areas, exclusive economic zones, or continental shelf should be done in accordance with the principle of equity. It's a basic principle of international law. And especially in semi-enclosed seas, international law suggests that the parties should get together, negotiate, engage with each other in good faith, and they should try to reach an agreement. But let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, such delineation agreements are not easy to conclude, especially when there are overlapping maritime areas and when there are also conflicting arguments and conflicting views. Turkey strongly believes that we have major interests to protect in the Eastern Mediterranean. We have vital interests to protect. And this is why we believe that in semi-enclosed seas, like in the Mediterranean, in the Eastern Mediterranean, we need to negotiate and to engage in good faith with each other. And the principle of equity is the major principle. The second principle, which we base our argument, is that islands in semi-enclosed seas do not necessarily generate full maritime zones. So islands, especially islands which are close to the coastline of the other adjacent country or the opposite country, then they should be enclaved. And here, the case law is on our side. So many case law, the international tribunals and the International Court of Justice and other decisions by different arbitration courts and the International Court of Justice suggest that islands do not necessarily generate full exclusive economic zones. And this is our, of course, this is why, for example, Turkey does not accept that maize, the island of Meis or Castellarizo, which is only 2 kilometers to the Turkish coast, and the whole size is 10 to 12 square kilometers, this island cannot generate 40,000 square kilometers as it is suggested by Greece. So this is why in the Eastern Mediterranean, this issue is to be resolved in the future. It will take time, and it will take the political will of the coastal states. And this is the situation there, but Turkey is determined to use its deep sea drilling capacity and try to strike to discover gas or oil, hydrocarbon resources, which we need in the Eastern Mediterranean. And of course, Turkey is also open to cooperation between states, among states, and also between Turkey and major oil companies. Because also, I think at the highest level, it was expressed that if we are to discover gas, or if other major companies are to discover gas near the island of Cyprus, that ad hoc arrangements could be made with energy companies pending a comprehensive settlement to the Cyprus issue. So it is very important to negotiate in good faith, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. We need to have the political will to resolve the matter. It will take time. As I said, it took 40 years to resolve the issue of delineation of maritime boundaries between the Russian Federation and Norway. So we need to be patient, and we have to work together in the interest of peace and prosperity of our people. So having said this, I have been told that maybe we might have only 10 more minutes. Maybe Mr. Kara would like to talk about, I know that the Vice Minister is waiting for us.
Yeah.
We will say a few words about
Thank you very much.
the Green Deal. And the moderator has already warned me that he would like to speak at 10:30. So we will wind it up. Mr. Kara, would you like to say a few words about especially the Green Deal? Let's not explain what the Green Deal is, but just what sort of consequences we might face here in Turkey if we do not, for example, abide by the dramatic changes that the European Union is willing to make. You have the floor, sir. Thank you.
Çok teşekkürler Mithat Bey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mithat. Of course, we all know the Green Deal of European Union. They are accomplishing to reduce half by 2030, and by 2050, they are aiming to accomplish carbon zero. And of course, this Green Deal is being shaped with the countries that they are trading with, of course. And the Green Deal, as it is stated by the President, says that it will be the main axis for development, further development of the European Union. And they are actually aiming to develop their economies based on the Green Deal. Of course, this Green Deal agreement is quite beneficial for the environmental sensitivities, but at the same time, it will boost the growth of the European companies. At least that's what the European Union is aiming for. Well, the European Union is an important trade partner. I mean, 50% of our trade volume is with the European Union, so we will be affected by that. There are certain important regulations, regulations regarding the circular economy and the carbon regulations. Well, there is a concept called carbon leakages. So there is an amount of carbon dioxide emissions per product, and it translates into a cost which will be undertaken by the companies. Such kind of a cost is not covered by the legal jurisdiction in Turkey right now. But if you are for example, exporting your products to European Union, and if you are emitting carbon dioxide, then you have to pay extra cost at the border, according to this new Green Deal agreement. Right now in the carbon market, the cost of carbon dioxide per ton is $30 at the moment. Of course, it can increase even further. I mean, we made the calculations based on that cost, and we see that the Turkish export products are energy intense products. So, which means that we might be paying an extra $1 billion of an additional carbon tax. I mean, if, for example, the cost of carbon per ton is 50 US dollars, then it will mean that, I mean, our costs will be doubled, like reaching to 2 billion extra dollars. That's why our companies are, you know, struggling with it. Well, distinguished minister, distinguished participants and panelists, thank you so much for being with us. I also would like to thank our speakers for their wonderful contributions. I mean, it is a broad topic, but right now, the Vice Foreign Minister will take the floor to deliver his speech. So with your permission, unfortunately, we will not be able to take any further questions, but we will be around here, so you can get in touch with us. Once again, thank you so much, sincerely. It was a wonderful topic to discuss with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you to your panelists, both here on stage and participating remotely. Indeed, a very deep and wide-ranging topic. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. We're going to sort of move the conversation over onto EU-Turkey relations and what the future holds. This is going to be quite a unique session in the sense that everybody is participating remotely, not only the keynote speaker, but also the moderator and participants. So allow me to introduce to you the session's keynote speaker.